Hi, welcome to the Mohua show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in today's episode we have Anuradha Gakkhar. Anuradha is a storyteller. As she says, I tell stories. She's had many years of experience in the media industry, having created path-breaking programming, headed large teams, and delivered quality content. Anuradha is a very dear friend of mine. I know her since I was a child. Her propensity to successfully conceive content across genres and steer fiction and non-fiction tools of storytelling gives her a vantage perspective and arms her with ways to use the best learnings from both. So welcome, Anuradha.
Hi, Mohua.
Hi. We'd like you to share with us your journey as a content creator. Everybody's talking about content these days. It's one of the biggest things since also this lockdown. Everybody has had the luxury of being at home and creating content, and we are bombarded with content. So it is such a crazily competitive space. Plus, you have to really be, as we say, hatke, which makes you hotter than the rest. And so tell me your journey and how did it start? How did this Delhi girl move to Bombay and be in this entire booming business?
So, the journey started from school when I was when I was in the 11th standard. I wanted to do radio. So I auditioned and I got my stint earlier as a producer and then later as a presenter with Yuvavani. At that time, All India Radio had their youth wing, which was Yuvavani. This was pre-FM era. So that's how it started. I used to do, and my first money which I earned came from there. It was like really a small amount, but it seemed very big at that point of time. So I somehow knew that I wanted to be in the media, and it got even more concretized when I was in college. And it kind of, like an epiphany, it happened when one of my teachers asked me, so what do you want to do? She was doing a meet and greet with us in college. And I remember I had just joined and she was asking everybody what do they want to do in the future because I was doing an entrepreneur small business. That was my graduation in. So it was, at that time it was used to be called those vocational courses. So it was, I didn't want to do a normal BA. I really wanted to do something like this. So then I just ended up saying, I want to be in the media. And it hit me myself that, okay, so this is exactly what I want to do. So that's how it started. And I started working immediately after college. I was freelancing, I was writing for some small papers. And I was doing my postgrad in journalism and advertising and PR. I was doing at the same time from different institutes. So that happened, and then I got work. So I started working. So that's how I landed up in media because that I was very clear that I want to be in it. Now that was the time, if you remember, there was not much apart from Doordarshan. Small things were starting up. So ZTV had just started. There was Home TV, which I ended up joining in Delhi. And with Home TV, I got the chance to come to Bombay and direct a multi-camera show. That was quite a coincidental thing which happened. It wasn't planned. At that point, the shift wasn't planned because there was a show they were doing, and it was a big stake show with big budgets. And somehow the pilot they had made didn't click. It wasn't directed well. It wasn't produced well. And when we were in Delhi, so the headquarters were very much in Delhi. So when I was asked for my opinion, because I had been working for a few years, so I told them that these are the problems I see and this is how it should be done. So the next thing I know that I've been offered this thing to shift to Bombay. And I absolutely took it on. And then I shifted here. I was here for a couple of years. But at that time, the channel was sold off to another company, Sahara. And I moved back to the Delhi office. And then I worked with them for another few years. Then I moved on to another production house in Delhi. And I directed at that time, which was a huge successful show for ZTV called Khubsurat. So Khubsurat was a fashion and a lifestyle show, which I did. And then I started writing scripts for that. Then I started writing scripts for another show which I was directing. It was a food show. It was a cooking show, which was again a big hit at that time in Z called Jhatpat Khana. So anyhow, all this was happening. But frankly, there wasn't much going on in Delhi at that point, and I really wanted to grow. And I had come to Bombay briefly, and I had applied to Channel V because I had heard that they're looking for people. Then I got hired in Channel V. I was still in Delhi, and they gave me 2 days precisely to shift to Bombay. So then I moved to Bombay at that point of time, bag and baggage. And since then, I've been here. So
So the
that's how
minute
Bombay happened.
so the minute I'm listening to this, all I can see is somebody with a very steely determination, somebody with very huge amount of clarity. Because when you say that you were very clear to not do your graduation like how most regular kids did during the times that you're talking about and go in for a vocational course, means someone who is obviously very, very clear about likes and dislikes, and having the ability to move cities and be able to, talk about, what should have been different. So, where does that determination come from, Anuradha? Did it come from some failure, or did it come from just constantly being successful with things? Or what would you attribute that to?
Okay, so the thing is that there was, from the family I come from, my mom was working. She was, she had started working very young. So I've had a working mother. And my dad, who was unlike any dad at that point of time, who had 3 daughters. And, that was a time when people were not very happy when daughters were born. And I have the privilege of being born in a family which was really, really of loving and extra, uh, and when it came to giving us all the freedom and to push us to achieve the best. So the determination came from my mom, the creative writing, and that the whole. I think it's my genes because my dad used to write. His family was really into poetry, and so that was the kind of atmosphere. And ours was a very filmy family, as in we loved our movies. We were taken to see films, even first day, first show. So that was a kind of a setup. And secondly, when you have a very strong mother, especially, who lets you fly, it really, really makes a difference. So touch wood. I lost her last year and I can really feel, uh, a huge gap in my life because she was my go-to for a lot of things and for creative things with my dad. So a lot of values that are in me of, not uh, shying away from struggle, not shying away from putting your point across, and not being in a situation where you're doing something which is not close to your heart. So that's the kind of thing that came from my mom. At the same time, with the creative people, and now that you've been working so well with creative writing and doing so much, you would also understand it comes from an actual place of being very sensitive. So that portion is still intact, but at the same time, you also grow and learn that how you want to make your place. And like today, if you ask me if there were any regrets, I should not have moved back to Delhi when the channel got sold to another company. I mean, my career would have been very different if I had stuck around then in Bombay, because Sony was coming up then and they were hiring people. And I was one of the few people, like really very few people who were female producers and directors at that time, even in non-fiction. And so that was a kind of a thing. But at the same time, I think another thing which has helped me is being in a place which lets women work without any fear, which is Mumbai. Otherwise, the way things are in Delhi, if I was there, I'm sure somewhere or the other it would have curtailed my freedom to think, my freedom to express. So I think it's actually a lot of things which work towards making us what we are.
So when you say Bombay and you feel that you've had more freedom of expression, do you think it's far more progressive in the mindset of the people from there, and Delhi is different? Because I am a Delhi girl and I know exactly what you're saying, but yet I just want all the listeners to also understand this a little bit more. What do you mean when you say that you found it more, freer for you in Bombay to pursue this part of the work?
I mean, in Delhi, when I was there, when I was working, at that time, Delhi was a much safer place at that point of time. My edits would finish at 2 o'clock in the night, 3 o'clock in the night, and I
Hmm.
would, you know, get into an office cab and reach home. Or at times, if I felt safe enough, I would even take a normal cab or a rickshaw at night to come home. But there will always be this fear in the back of the mind if it wasn't office transport, that I am taking kind of a risk. And in at that point, it was like understood that suppose you're going out for a film with your friends, then and if it's a night show or a late evening show, somebody from the group who's a man would offer to drop you home, and you will happily accept. So that says a lot about the kind of the society we were living in even then. But that was also to
Absolutely.
do with the times. At that time, women weren't working that much, and there were few, but not everybody. Like today, almost every household has a woman working. Either it's their daughter, or it's the mother itself, or it's both of them. I think there are a lot of factors. Like once the BPO industries came in, that has changed a lot in Delhi. But simultaneously, crime also increased. So it's a very sad thing that while there were a lot of opportunities for women to work there, the crime increased. And Delhi also is a place that doesn't work 24/7, unlike Mumbai. Because Mumbai works on business, and there are things which are working 24/7. So that also kind of keeps the city alive. And Delhi, it kind of shuts much earlier. So if you're in a profession where your timings are not the typical 9 to 5, then it's up to you, how you secure your freedom. And it's totally up to you. There's nobody you can rely on. In Mumbai, I mean, you've been to Mumbai so many times, Mama. So
Yes.
the thing is that here, A, the city is alive most of the time. B, the people are extremely busy working, and there's kind of, I think the original Maharashtrian Mumbai, their value systems are very different. And I'm saying it, I may be wrong, but well, whatever I could see, I was never stared at in Mumbai. In Delhi, it will always be a thing. And not just me, everybody who's been there.
So I
And if you've
so
traveled in
agree
local
with you.
transport there is
Yes.
no way on earth that you
Yeah.
have not been sexually abused in a
Oh,
bus.
for sure.
Whether it's somebody
Absolutely.
brushing you their shoulders against you or touching you. So these are small, small things which makes Mumbai safer. Because today, if I have to think about my personal safety and people going to violate me, I have traveled on extremely jam-packed locals and sometimes not in the female compartment. You know, so these are the things which make Mumbai a little different. I think it's the people who make the city.
I so agree with you, actually, Anuradha, when you say this, because, when I look back, I started my career as a journalist. And invariably, like you're always lowest in the pecking order, when you just trainee journalist. And obviously, the senior guys would get the drop off first, right, in the office car, and you're the last
Yeah,
one. So there would be times when, the pages would go out and I would want to come back, and, you're desperate at that time. You don't get an auto, which is, Delhi, you know Delhi like the way I do. It was in Barakhamba Road. My office used to be there. And so I've caught a DTC bus, and, you felt frightened. You don't get into a bus unless there are like 6 people at least in the bus. Even with 4 people, you don't enter that bus. And in the same way, many years later, of course, I, have also worked extensively in Bombay. And it was so comfortable for me even at 2 o'clock at night, because in an advertising agency, you know how, you do work late. There are campaigns that go out. And I've got a taxi and I've gone back without feeling threatened even for a second. So, I so agree with you. And today I live in Bangalore, And I know that I am safe in this city most times. Than what I would have. I still carry the Delhi fear. Like at night when I'm walking out, I'm always scared of someone lurking at on my back, and that's the level of scarring which we've had, I think, as young girls in Delhi. I love Delhi,
True,
but
true.
I so agree with you that in Bangalore or in Bombay, I've not felt threatened as I have felt in Delhi. But coming back, to talking about television, I mean, I remember we both come from a time when families got together to watch the Sunday film, and we had Chitrahar and we had those amazing news readers. Today, television has become a completely different ball game altogether. In many homes, people don't watch, and in some homes, they really, really watch. And I would believe, a lot of tier two cities, there's a lot of people who have discussions, of serials that happen, and also in major cities. But I think that would be essentially the vernacular shows that happen. And because in India, we are so diverse with our creativity. Also, Bengalis have got a whole bunch of serial, and the shows that happen. You have the Hindi shows. So where do you see this going? Because some of the shows are rather regressive. And we are really at a cusp where things are changing, and there are young girls who are coming in from smaller towns into bigger cities. And do you think television will ever be bold enough? For me, I think Sex Education was an amazing serial. Of course, I mean it was on Netflix and we watched it. Do you think India would ever be bold enough? And do you think it's needed? Because television to me is one of the greatest mediums of being able to give out a message, because there's such a huge reach for television. Do you think it's regressive?
So the thing is that this discussion about television or serials being regressive has been the longest one. Uh, but the good thing is that things are changing, and a lot of new shows. When you see, the protagonist has changed, and also the protagonist, the viewers have changed, because now, earlier when TRPs would come when the heroine is in doldrums and is crying. Today, TRPs come when heroine is battling something and emerging victorious. So there has been a change. It's not like there's not been a change. Now, when we talk about content, and especially when we talk about television content, we cannot talk keeping the metro population in mind or multiple television households in mind. Most of the country still is a single television household. And so when we have to talk, for example, about a show like Sex Education, I don't think, you know, we would ever see on a single household screen that show playing. So that's one part of it, the way television is viewed in India. Secondly, it is a business after all. And the two shows I wrote before that, I've obviously created a lot of concepts. I have been a creative director on many. But the ones which I actually wrote recently, not recently, it's been a few years now. Both of them were on one of the biggest platforms, which was Star Plus. And one I was doing the dialogues for, and I did a few screenplays for, and the other I was doing screenplays. Now, both of them had nothing to do with the kind of series you would imagine to be daily soaps. One of them had a protagonist who was fighting for a divorce, and she was staying separately from her husband, and her dream was to become a cricketer. And when she couldn't become a cricketer, she started teaching. All right. Now that's a very different protagonist, which you wouldn't have seen many years back. The other show had three young girls and their mother after their and they belong to a billionaire family, but the father is caught in a scam and he commits suicide, and they have to return to their hometown, which is Banaras. Now, again, that story was not anything like what you would normally see in a daily soap. But sadly, both the shows didn't work. Now, that's the reality, Mohua, which one needs to face, because eventually it's a business. If I'm getting a budget of 10 lakhs, 12 lakhs per episode or whatever, somewhere the advertiser is going to ask for their pound of flesh. And if nobody is watching your show, where do you think the money is coming from? So it's a vicious cycle, but attempts are regularly made to try new waters. And also, we can't totally discount the audience taste. We can, of course, say that they are still stuck in the regressive mode, but it's also family viewing, it's also their aspiration. So now for the last many years, actually, you would see a lot of aspirational shows. So I think while we want things to change, they are changing slowly but steadily. More they are changing, but they will still remain uh, in the space that the public accepts it. Now, coming to what people are watching in metros and tier two towns, they are also now watching. Thanks to the pandemic, a lot of them have shifted to OTT platforms. So they are also watching certain shows, they are rejecting certain shows, which can be gauged even in the kind of movies that are working. So now realism is going to work more, where people can relate to the lives being shown. Earlier, it used to be like really a huge gap between the kind of lives they will actually lead and the kind of lives they'll see on the big screen. So, what I feel is that voices are emerging which are taking the story forward when it comes to not being regressive, quote unquote.
So yeah, and rather it's really interesting, when we note that we go back to a time when there were serials like Tamas, there was serials like Bharate Khoj, there was serials like Bunyad, and there was serial like Hum Log, and of course after that happened Mahabharat and Ramayan, and that's when I think that whole going back to this whole, and then I think there was a serial which was called Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I never watched it ever. Big, but I do know that a whole lot of families used to get together, and of course, it gave Smriti Irani, her power of position today because people did look up to her because of the serial.
Yeah.
And it is strange that we don't find serials like Tamas, we don't find serials now, on for mass consumption. And that kind of saddens me a little bit because I just think that tastes have changed so much from before. And of course, I mean, one needs to evolve along with the changing taste. But I think one could probably hope that television does come up with more content that would leave you with critical and analytical thinking.
True, true. But also, Baba, see, the thing is that's where things get divided. There are times when the viewer is watching purely for entertainment, then you'll have your
Yes.
Nagins and you'll have your Satyas and whatever to keep them entertained. At the same time, there will always be like when there was a Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu, there was Astitva, which was used to be my appointment viewing, which was an extremely progressive show where, again, you had an older woman, younger husband, and it spoke of a lot of things. So there were always been, that was a Ravi Rai show, and there have always been, if I'm not mistaken. So there will always be makers who will bring forth strong woman-oriented stories. Now, even for a Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu, see what the thing is that you can't immediately throw things which are not real in that sense. For largely in India, the married women don't have the kind of voice and rights which, let's say, a man has. Now, that's something which we need to portray. So, a lot of makers, because so they, when you talk to them, you understand what they are saying. So, because obviously, the first question they always get asked is, when will you stop making these regressive shows, right? So, the thing is that if you see the R, most of the time, even in the Smriti Irani time when she was doing that, and there were a couple of other shows, your heroine of that series will start as somebody you would maybe not conceive as the strongest person. But if you'll see, all the fights are fought by them, all the struggles overcome are by them. So even in a Sasvi Kabhi Bahu, though it was a family full of successful men, and as in terms of characters, and they were big business, but if you'll see, all the big decisions were made by Dulcie. So that's the kind of storytelling which the format which is being followed here. In fact, there were a lot of shows and a lot of channels which are not even existing anymore. They would jump to things like, we want a strong female protagonist and she wants to be a pilot, and how she becomes a pilot. Now, the problem then is where the disconnect happens. And this is from a lot of research that I have done with channels for certain shows. And they were very kind enough to share the research they do because they constantly keep researching. So I was told that, the impression I got was that my dream is to finish my education and not be able to leave, to be forced to leave studies because we don't have enough money. I don't want to know about what the others do. This is not my story. So that also is a sad reality where women are positioned in India. So for them, okay, I'll come at it from a different angle altogether. So the last work I was doing for 2.5 years, I was working with this NGO called Girl Effect, and my audience was 17 to 19-year-old young girls in lower middle class families in northern India, right?
Okay.
So when we went and we spent time with these young girls, and we learned so much about them. Now they are all on mobiles today. Most of the youngsters are on mobiles, and we were going to do content for them which was sexual and reproductive health and relationships, because on both angles they are exposed right now because they don't have a say in a relationship. Also, they all had boyfriends, and their sexual health is in imminent danger because most of them keep getting abortions or keep popping emergency pills. So that was the base. But what we realized is, like, they they always felt that they are the outsiders. Their stories are not being told. But the reality is such that their stories have to be then turned around a little bit and made a little more entertaining. They themselves won't watch their real stories, but they want somehow things to happen. So it's a constant give and take, and there's a constant struggle with what exactly to give them. And while they were watching all shows on OTT platforms or downloading them on Telegram, but they were also watching the daily soaps. Because with their mothers, they will watch the daily soap. When they were alone, they'll watch content which they will never be able to watch on television. So the audience also is in a flux right now, like everything else. So it's a very interesting time, and I
It's a
totally
very
agree when you
interesting
say
time.
that we should do more progressive stuff. It is happening. It's happening subtly, but it's definitely happening. It just starts at a level where you show a protagonist at a place where you feel bad for them. I mean, we feel bad for them. The other women who are not us, who are underprivileged, they feel, oh yeah, this is my story. So then slowly you would see the progression, and then you will see her fight and emerge. That's the kind of standard formula that's followed. Just plain simple love stories will continue to work. That formula will also continue to work. Where the hero heroine will fight in the beginning, the meet cute will happen, then they will fall in love, blah blah blah. All that will continue because you also need a space to forget your own day to day worries. And that's why romance really worked a lot, especially when we had the afternoon slot, which I don't know if it's still there, but then there was this huge afternoon slot where, if you would see, most of it used to be romance, because that was the time men weren't at home and women were alone at home watching. So they would love these romantic stories, these mushy things, and that whole shebang. So it's not very easy to create something which will please everybody, Mohua, to be honest.
Yes, of course, I understand that because, I mean, we live in a diaspora that is so segregated in its own ways, with its own exposure, with its, with the socioeconomic, division among people. But thank you so much, Anuradha. It was absolutely, a pleasure to have you in today's podcast. And, this really hoping that people like you will take content ahead. And, for all the listeners who would be tuning in right now to the podcast will know from you as to how your entire journey was, from where you started and how you chose things that are different. For our times, I think you were a brave heart to be able to do that because all of us followed regular colleges and regular courses. So I would like to thank you for taking out the time to come for today's
Pleasure's
podcast.
all mine, Mawa. Pleasure's all mine. And Mawa, let me just say to whoever is listening in that whatever she has been saying, very kind words. She herself is one of the strongest women I have had the pleasure of knowing. In fact, we had lost touch, we reconnected, and the way she has carved a niche for herself and she's carved out her life, it's absolutely amazing. So, pat on your back too, like 2 pats on your back. Mohua.
Thank you
And I'm so
so
happy
much.
that we are from the same batch and we all, are self-made people, frankly.
Yes, we are. We are absolutely self-made people with little in our lives, and we had more in our hearts. And I think
Yes.
that kind of also kept all of us, very grounded with things around us. And yes, and to the memories of Delhi, which still remains my favorite city.
Yes.
Childhood memories. And thank you so much, Anuradha. And
Thanks, Mohua. Continue with your fabulous work that you're doing.
thank you. To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk imandari se.